All right, I am re-recording because the other one got screwed up. So here we go. Chapter 28, if you remember, was when um, Darren had avoided Steve because earlier he had attacked his friend on the soccer field. If you remember, he um, sucked his blood and everybody is freaked out. And then he goes home and he's in the bathroom kind of looking at himself, and his sister comes in, and he almost attacks his sister. And that's when he realizes that he can't continue to live at home and be a half vampire. So he goes to find Mr. Crepsley, and Mr. Crepsley said that he's going to have to kill him before he can become his assistant. So we're on chapter 29. I spent my last weekend saying silent goodbyes. I visited every one of my favorite spots: library, swimming pool, cinema, parks, soccer field. I went to some of the places with Mom or Dad, some with Alan Morris or Tommy Jones. I would have liked to spend time with Steve, but I couldn't bear to face him. I got the feeling every so often that I was being followed, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. But whenever I turned to look, nobody was there. Eventually, I put it down to nerves and ignored it. I treated every minute with my family and friends as as if it were special. I paid close attention to their faces and voices so I would never forget. I knew I'd never see these people again, and that tore me apart inside. But it was the way it had to be. There was no going back. They could do nothing wrong that weekend. Mom's kisses didn't embarrass me. Dad's orders didn't bother me. Alan's stupid jokes didn't annoy me. I spent more time with Annie than anybody else. I was going to miss her the most. I gave her piggyback rides and swung her around by the arms and took her to the soccer field with me and Tommy. I even played with her dolls. Sometimes I felt like crying. I'd look at Mom and Dad or Annie and realize how much I loved them and how empty my life would be without them. I had to turn aside at moments like that and take long, deep breaths. A couple of times it didn't work, and I had to rush away to cry in private. I think they guessed something was wrong. Mom came into my room that Saturday night and stayed for a long time, tucking me into bed, telling me stories, listening to me talk. It had been years since we spent time together like that. I felt sorry, after she'd gone, that we hadn't had more nights like this. In the morning, Dad asked if there was anything that I wanted to talk about. He said I was a growing young man and would be going through lots of changes, and he understood if I had mood swings or wanted to go off by myself, but he would always be there for me to talk to. Yeah, you'll be here, but I won't. I felt like crying, but I kept quiet, nodded my head, and thanked him. I behaved as perfectly as possible. I wanted to leave a fine, final impression, so they would remember me as a good son, a good brother, a good friend. I didn't want anybody thinking badly of me when I was gone. Dad was going to take us out to a restaurant for dinner that Sunday, but I asked if we could stay home to eat. It would be my last meal with them, and I wanted it to be special. When I was looking back on it in later years, I wanted to be able to remember us together at home, a happy family. Mom cooked my favorite food: chicken, roast potatoes, corn on the cob. Annie and I had freshly squeezed orange juice to drink. Mom and Dad shared a bottle of wine. We had strawberry cheesecake for dessert, and everybody was in a good mood. We sang songs. Dad cracked terrible jokes. Mom played a tune with a pair of spoons. Annie recited a few poems. Everybody joined in for a game of charades. It was a day I wish would never end. But, of course, all days must, and finally, as it always does, the sun dropped and darkness of the night crept across the sky. Dad looked up after a while, then at his watch. "Time for bed. You two have school in the morning." No, I thought. I don't have school ever again. That should have cheered me up, but all I could think was no school means no Mr. Dalton, no friends, no soccer, no school trips. I delayed going to bed as long as I could. I spent forever taking off my clothes and putting on my pajamas, longer still washing my hands and face and brushing my teeth. Then, when it could be avoided no longer, I went downstairs to the living room where Mom and Dad were talking. They looked up, surprised to see me. Are you all right, Darren? Mom asked. I'm fine, I said. You're not feeling sick? I'm fine, I assured her. I just wanted to say good night. I put my arms around Dad, then kissed him on the cheek. Next, I did the same with Mom. Good night, I said to each. Well, this one's for the books, Dad laughed, rubbing his cheek where I'd kissed him. How long's it been since the two of us got a... He kissed the two of us good night, Angie. Too long, Mom smiled, patting my head. I love you, I told them. I don't know. I know I haven't said it very often, but I do. I love you both, and always will. But we love you too, Mom said. Don't we, Dermot? Of course we do, Dad said. Well, tell him, Mom insisted. Dad sighed. I love you, Darren, he said, rolling his eyes in a way he knew would make me laugh, then gave me a hug. Really, I do, he said, serious this time. I left then. I stood outside the door a while listening to them talk, reluctant to depart. What do you think brought that on? Mom asked. Kids. Who knows how their minds work? Well, there's something up. He's been acting oddly for some time now. Well, maybe he's got a girlfriend, Dad suggested. Maybe, Mom said, but didn't sound convinced. I'd lingered long enough. I was afraid that if I waited any longer, I might rush into the room and tell them what was really the matter. If I did, they'd stop me from going ahead with Mr. Crepsley's plan. They'd say that vampires weren't real and fight to keep me with them in spite of the danger. I thought of Annie and how close I'd come to biting her, and I knew I must not let them stop me. I trudged upstairs to my room. It was a warm night, and the window was open. That was important. Mr. Crepsley was waiting inside the closet. He emerged when he heard me closing the door. It's stuffy in there. I feel sorry for Madame Octa having to spend so much time in a... Shut up, I told him. No need to be rude. I was merely making a comment. Well, don't. You might not think much of this place, but I do, I said. This has been my home, my room, my closet ever since I can remember, and I'm never going to see it again after tonight. This is my last little while here, so don't badmouth it, right? I'm sorry, he said. I took one long last look around the room, then sighed unhappily. I pulled a bag out from underneath the bed and handed it to Mr. Crepsley. What is this? He asked suspiciously. Some personal stuff, my diary, a picture of my family, a couple other things, nothing that will be missed. Will you watch it for me? Yes, he said, but only if you promise not to look through it, I said. Vampires do not have secrets from each other, he said. But when he saw my face, he shrugged. I will not open it, he promised. All right, I said, taking a deep breath. Do you have the potion? He nodded and handed over a small, dark bottle. I looked inside. The liquid was dark and thick and foul-smelling. Mr. Crepsley moved behind me and laid his hands on my neck. Are you sure this'll work? I asked nervously. Trust me, he said. But I always thought a broken neck meant people couldn't walk or move. No, the bones of the neck do not matter. Paralysis only happens if the spinal cord, a long nerve running down the middle of the neck, breaks. I will be careful not to damage it. Well, won't the doctors think it strange? I asked. They will not check. The poison will slow your heart down so much they will be sure you are dead. They will find the broken neck and put two and two together. If you were older, they might go ahead with an autopsy, but no doctor likes cutting a child open. Now, are you totally clear on what is going to happen and how you must act? He asked. Yes. There must be no mistakes. If you make one slip, our plans will fall apart. I'm not a fool. I know what to do, I snapped. Then do it, he said. So I did. With one angry gesture, I swallowed the contents of the bottle. I grimaced at the taste, then shuddered as my body started to stiffen. There wasn't much pain, but an icy feeling spread through my bones and veins. My teeth began to chatter. It took about 10 minutes for the potion to work its deadly charms. At the end of that time, I couldn't move any of my limbs. My lungs weren't working. Well, they were, but very, very slowly. And my heart had stopped. Again, not fully, but enough for its beat to be undetectable. I'm going to snap your neck now, Mr. Crepsley said, and I heard a quick clicking sound as he jerked my head to one side. I couldn't feel anything. My senses were dead. There, he said. That should do it. Now I'm going to throw you out the window. He carried me over and stood there a moment, with me, breathing in the night air. I have to throw you hard enough to make it look genuine, he said. You might break some bones in the fall, and they will start hurting when the potion wears off after a few days, but I will fix them later on. Here we go. He picked me up, paused a moment, then hurled me out and down. I fell quickly, the house whizzing past in a blur, and I landed heavily on my back. My eyes were open, and I found myself staring at the drain at the foot of the house. For a while, my body went undetected, so I lay there, listening to the sounds of the night. In the end, it was a passing neighbor who spotted me and investigated. I couldn't see his face, but I heard his gasp when he turned me over and saw my lifeless body. He rushed straight around to the front of the house and pounded on the door. I could hear his voice as he shouted for my mother and father, then their voices as he led them back around. They thought he was pulling their leg or had been mistaken. My father was marching angrily and muttering to himself. The footsteps stopped when they rounded the bend and saw me. For a long, terrible moment, there was complete silence. Dad and Mom rushed forward and picked me up. Darren! Mom screamed, clutching me to her chest. Let go, Angie, Dad shouted, prying me free and laying me down in the grass. What's wrong with him, Dermot? Mom wailed. I don't know. He must have fallen. Dad stood and gazed up at the open bedroom window. I could see his hands flexing into fists. He's not moving, Mom said calmly, then grabbed me and shook me fiercely. He's not moving. He's not moving. Dad once again eased her hands away. He beckoned our neighbor over and handed Mom to him. Please take her inside, he said softly. Call for an ambulance. I'll stay here and look after Darren. Is he dead? Our neighbor asked. Mom moaned loudly when he said it and buried her face in her hands. Dad shook his head softly. No, he said, giving Mom's shoulder a light squeeze. He's just paralyzed, like his friend was. Mom lowered her hands. Like Steve, she said, half hopefully. Yes, like Steve, and he'll snap out of it like Steve. Now go call for help, okay? Mom nodded, then hurried away with our neighbor. Dad held his smile until she was out of sight. Then he bent over me, checked my eyes, felt my wrist for a pulse. When he found no sign of life, he laid me back down, brushed a lock of hair out of my eyes, then did something I never expected to see. He started to cry. And that's how I came to enter a new, miserable phase of my life, namely, death.